On her final voyage, Old Ironsides, trim and proud, moved majestically into New York Harbor on August 29, 1931. Launched in 1797, her faded log, yellowed with age, was a record of long and heroic service. Though her hull bore the scars of many battles, she had never known defeat. And in our history, no ship ever fired the imagination of Americans like the frigate Constitution, whose sturdy side shielded and protected a young and struggling nation in the dark, uncertain days following the Revolution. Retired in 1881 after 84 years of active service, Old Ironsides had just been rebuilt and restored as she sailed by the Statue of Liberty a quarter of a century ago on a 22,000-mile farewell journey. American schoolchildren had contributed their pennies by the millions to save the gallant old ship, which brought glory to her name and honor to her country.
Hello, my name is Dan Callan. I practice law here in Joliet, and this is my law office. And my good friend Ernie Geer, we're here to present the ships that Ernie has built over the years. The ship that you see behind me is the U.S.S. Constitution. And before we go too much further, I'd like to introduce Mr. Geer. This is Ernie Geer. He's had a business of Geer Radio and TV here in Joliet since 1953 or thereabouts, but we've lost count. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Ernie. How are you, Ernie?
Yeah, I'm here, and I'm glad to see you.
Good to see you.
You're doing a good job.
No, you're the one that's done the good job. You built this ship here, the Constitution,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Take a look at it, and I want you to tell the TV audience how you go about this. I mean, this is not a kit. This is not from parts from a box or anything like that. Tell the people how you build this thing. What do you do first?
Well, I build a lot of ships, and usually you start out with the bottom part, okay? Then, of course,
So the bottom part is called the keel, right?
Yeah, the keel is right above that. Here you can feel it with your hands.
Okay.
And if you put the keel down, you, of course, need to have a drawing, and the drawing is the first thing.
Well, first, now, when you get a drawing of a ship, do you get a picture of it?
Only a picture.
Do you get the dimensions of the ship?
And, well, you make the dimensions.
Okay.
Okay. See, you put it on a drawing table, lay it out, and you start with the middle. The middle is the keel. Mm-hmm. And then you do the work on paper. And a lot of times that doesn't turn out right, so you do it twice. And that happens quite often.
Now, from the keel, you build the ribs of the ship.
That's
is that
right.
correct?
That's right. You go work the distance from the keel to the side, and then you round it off.
All right. Now, what kind of wood is the hull of the ship made?
Well,
This would be called the hull.
that's right. The hull, the wood don't matter, because it's going to be always painted and worked down. But then when you go up higher, you use either walnut or you use any type of material that is, I should say, a little easier to work with, because you have to file it, you have to draw it, you got to do all kinds of different things with it.
I know this ship was built back in 2010. Do you happen to recall what kind of wood you used in this one? Do you recall?
Well, these are wood strips that you run through your machine, and then you make it so that you can get a line in there. This, of course, is more like on an automobile when you see lines in there. Mm-hmm. You put those in there. They're not easy to put in.
I don't imagine.
So,
now, what kind of wood is it, though, Ernie? Is this walnut?
This is walnut, most
walnut?
likely, yeah.
Okay.
You know,
and then when you put the deck on, the deck is made of what kind of wood?
Well, the deck is kind of a special deal. You use a white wood.
Okay.
You know, they have those different type of
poplar wood?
poplar, you know.
Okay.
And then and the way I do it, everybody does things different, but I lay it on a flat table and tighten it and take a sander and sand it back and forth until everything is even.
Okay.
And once you got it even, then of course you have to break it down to the different lines, and in most cases, if you look over the top, you see the lines about this far apart with a pencil. And you have a pencil that's kind of solid, and you move it so that the boards look exactly like a regular board.
Okay.
Then you're going to go ahead and you spray it with a material like we have right here on the bottom part.
All right. Well, let's move on a little bit to get up to the hard part, what I think is the hard part, the masts. How do you make the masts? There's 3 masts here. There's the main mast, the mizzen mast, the forecastle mast.
Well, I have a lathe at the house where I work, and I put it in the lathe, find out how long you want it, and some of them are in pieces. See, like this one here, right there, and the next one is moved forward a little bit. So these two have to match, so that this part here becomes an even match with this one here. See, there's 2.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is that this is actually 2 pieces here. These masts consist of 2 pieces.
2 or 3, depending on
the height.
Yeah.
Now, the real intricate part, as I see it, is how do you make these, what the sailors would call blocks? These, the pulleys, the common word for them is a pulley, but a sailor would call them a block. How do you make those?
Well, what you call a pulley here is an item that comes off of a dowel. You see here.
Well, the dowel is a long stick like that.
Yes.
And you actually cut these off and fabricate them with a lathe?
No, what I do, I line them up the size that I want. Each one a little bit different. Now, once you got that lined up, then I have a bandsaw, and I leave the pulley right there, or the dowel, and I cut into it with a bandsaw like this. Once you got cut into it, then you take the dowel off, and then you put it in on a sander so that it gets a round area. But you have already the cutting in now. Here, this is in. So then you go ahead and you drill a hole through there.
Okay, well, let me show the TV audience here. This little pulley or dowel, it's fastened off of a dowel, and he cuts it off, and then he makes a groove in it, or a gap.
Right.
And then he fills that gap with a little pin.
Right.
And then he attaches the ropes, or what the sailors would call lines, to these pulleys. And there's probably, I would say, what is there, Ernie, about 30 or 40 of these pulleys that you made?
Well, it depends on the type of
how big the ship is. But on this particular ship, there looks like maybe 50 of them.
It's got a lot of them.
Yeah, it's got a lot. So, now, the intricate thing that I want to ask you about that is really interesting, in my opinion, is I've seen a number of ships, and maybe you folks out there have seen ships, model ships, where they'll have their sails, and the sails will be furled, so it looks like a dead ship. Now, you have the ability to make these sails billowed sails, and which is unusual if you look at a lot of model ships. How do you make those sails so they look like billowed, so when you look at this ship, it gives you the illusion of motion, which if you see the ships with their sails furled, they look dead in the water. But this gives you the illusion of motion. Now tell the people in the audience, how do you make those sails look like they're wind behind them?
Let's take one sail as an example, right there.
Okay.
And I put it on my drawing table and draw it out the way I want it, size-wise.
Size-wise.
Once I got that, then I go ahead and I hang it up on the, and before, of course, you got these in there.
Yeah, the yard arms. These are called yard arms.
And I hang it up and see how it comes out, because not all of them come out alike. Then this was hanging right here then.
Right.
And then I just bend it around and tightened it, bend the other one around, tighten it, and then see what it looks like. Because it's not all right just by hanging them. So then once I got these, then I put them back on the table, and I put an end on the side, like this piece here comes around and this way. Then I get wire.
Wire.
And, yes,
Okay.
I get wire, usually copper wire. It's easy to work with. And put the copper wire
So
in
the
line.
copper wire is this arc here,
Right.
and
then
that gives it the billowing look.
Yeah, then take the edge, put glue in there. See if you grab a hold of this has glue,
Yeah.
glue and a wire in there. Now that, of course, going to look straight, you see. So once the glue dries, then you can take your hand and you can bend it
Form
the way
it.
you want it, yes.
Very good.
And then, of course, it'll end up like this. But you see, this has a line in here.
Yeah.
And this particular line makes it look real good.
Well, yeah.
you see.
Now, the next thing that's fascinating, and sometimes, Ernie, I think you're a spider, you're an arachnid, the way you fashion these what the sailors call lines and these ladders. How do you do that? Is this all done by hand? Do you tie each of these
Everything
into
is
knots?
done by hand. Okay, you put a board there where you want it there, a little bit on an angle, because the wind blows from the back.
Yeah.
And if you have this piece over there, then it'll tilt, you see. But this way, you put it there, and then you have hooks right here. Now you go ahead and you tighten the hook. Some of them do it with this type of a material.
Yeah.
But, you
Well,
know,
these are little brass eyes,
Yeah.
but the actual tying of these lines, these ropes, you actually tie these yourself, right?
yeah, you don't have
It
very
must
much
take you a
choice.
long time to do that.
That's why it takes
You don't go to Walmart and buy one of these little rope ladders,
No,
is that right?
That's why it takes you a year or longer to build one.
To do that.
You see.
Now, after you get all of this done, you put the flags on it. These cannons, what are these? Where do you get those?
Again, you go to a dowel, you figure out what size they have to be, and then if you put it on the lay and you turn it so it comes out like this, and then you take a drill and drill a hole in it,
Okay.
and then you take gold paint and paint it out.
Now, the U.S.S. Constitution was a 44-gun frigate, so it had 22 guns on each side. Is that correct?
Right.
All right. Now, the back here, you've got the wheel, and you can turn that wheel, actually move the rudder. Is that right?
That does, yes.
Yeah. That's really
now that's-
quite a piece of work.
Well, that's not really very hard if you, see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you don't have to move it. That's
Now,
quite all right.
I'll tell you how that's done.
Well, now,
Okay.
let's move on into the history of the ship. Is there anything else you wish to tell us about the ship that we missed or I missed?
Well, you have a man up there that makes
Yeah.
sure that they
Yeah.
don't run
Right.
into shore.
Yeah.
And over here, some of these masts, they are straight up, some of them longer like
Yeah,
this.
yeah, the spar.
Depending on, So I would say when this thing was designed, they just had the house on the bottom and they set that over on the top. So there's some outlook can be there all the time at any time they want to see them. And
Well,
Go ahead.
Let me tell a little bit about the history of the ship, if you don't mind, Ernie. We'll
ahead.
talk about
Go ahead.
a little bit about the history of the ship. This is the U.S.S. Constitution. It is one of the original ships built by the in 1794. Was an act of Congress. George Washington wanted a navy because even actually before the United States was even formed in 1787, they were having problems with the Barbary pirates on the north coast of Africa. So Washington in 1794 signed a bill that was passed by Congress to build 6 frigates, and that was the original United States Navy. The U.S.S. Constitution was the one of the 6 frigates. Now, the first mission of the U.S.S. Constitution, it had some minor scuffles with the Barbary pirates during Washington's administration. And then along comes Thomas Jefferson. In 1800, he was elected president. And the Barbary pirates were taking taxes. They were taxing, you could call it a tax, the American shipping in the in North Africa and the Mediterranean. And the Emir of Tripoli started stopping the ships and taxing them and taking tribute. And Thomas Jefferson sent the fleet to North Africa, and the battle cry back then was millions for defense and not 1 cent for tribute. So Jefferson sent the fleet over there, and in 1803, and by 1805 they signed a treaty with the Tripoli Emir of Tripoli, and peace was restored, and American shipping went along the shipping lanes in peaceful commerce. So that was the first mission of the Constitution, the other frigates, in 1803 to 1805. But the big where the Ironsides, where the U.S.S. Constitution got its reputation was in the War of 1812. And the War of 1812 was started because the British, who were fighting Napoleon at the time, would board American ships and take their sailors, British-born sailors, and impress them into the British Navy. The United States didn't like that, so they started the War of 1812. Unfortunately for the United States Army was significantly defeated all during the war. The only bright spot we had was the U.S.S. Constitution. And the U.S.S. Constitution during the War of 1812 was 5-0. It went up against 5 different British warships and sunk them all. The first battle they had was with a ship called the HMS Guerriere. The French would pronounce it Guerriere, which basically is a French word, means warship. And they badly damaged and had to sink the Guerriere. And one of the sailors, the English Navy, says, "Oh my gosh, the cannonballs are bouncing off the ship as if it was made of iron." So hence the name Old Ironsides, and it became an icon of the American Navy. And that was its highlight was the War of 1812. And after that, it became a training ship, and years later it was restored and became basically a tourist attraction now. But what I want to say, the reason the cannonballs bounced off this ship is because the ship was made of what's called live oak. And live oak is a very dense wood. It grows mainly in the south. And the other thing that the architecture of this ship was they put the ribs of the ship, that I already meant, instead of like 3 foot apart, they put them like 1.5 feet apart.
Real close.
They're
yes.
real close. So the ribs of the ship were real close, and they were covered with live oak, which is an extremely dense wood. Ship was not made of iron, but it was just nicknamed Old Ironsides because the cannonballs would bounce off the
They still
dense
can't
wood.
think it.
Now, the U.S.S. Constitution is the oldest still commissioned ship in the United States Navy. This is the Queen Bee of the United States Navy, and the Queen Mother. The ship is in the Boston Harbor. It's still commissioned. It's under commission. As the requirements of its commission, it has to sail 1 mile each year. So,
One time around.
One time around the harbor, they take 1 mile, and that keeps its commission. So if you're ever in Boston and you're taking a tour of Boston, stop by and see the Constitution. You'll be amazed. 475 officers and men were on a ship like this, and it was very, very cramped. So that's pretty much a Reader's Digest version of the U.S.S. Constitution, the history of the United States Constitution.
It's a beautiful ship.
It is a beautiful ship. Okay, I did prepare a history of the ship over here that you can view. It talks about when it was built, how long it is, the complement of men, and pretty much what I've said here before. The interesting thing, though, is the second thing, where it talks about one of the missions of the U.S.S. Constitution. It went to Jamaica, and they had 44,000 gallons of water on the ship. And this is interesting. They went to Jamaica, they went to the Azores, they went to Spain, they went up to Scotland, and each of these places they would take on provisions. Basically, it was wine, whiskey, rum, and when they got back to, they encountered a number of British ships. When they got back to Boston Harbor, they had no gunpowder, no cannonballs, no alcohol, but they still had 33,000 gallons of water. And the reason that, you think, wow, a bunch of drunken sailors. Back then, they didn't drink the water because the water would make you sick. So consequently, the sailors would drink rum. And the sailors were given a rum ration each day so that they could stay hydrated with rum. So that's, you'll be able to read that. That's pretty interesting.
How it started here in the United States, because I used to do airplanes and all kinds of stuff in Europe, you know, before I came here. And so if we start out with the ships, you ready for me? Okay, it so happened that we have from our business a trip to England. And in England, of course, you have classes, schools, and so forth. And we went through all that stuff, and then we got so many days extra that you can go and visit different places. Since we are not familiar with England itself, they told us, well, they have transportation here, they call it the tube. Well, what do we do? We still don't know nothing. So I said to one of the 5 guys that we were, let's get into a tube wherever it takes us. Well, so we got into the tube and we went off. What we went through, we don't know, because it moves pretty fast, and all of a sudden it stopped, and we saw a big ship there. The ship itself was no sails, so it was in one of our, I would say probably concrete basin. That's probably a pretty good word for it. And it's reasonable ship. And so I said, well, let's get in there and see what happened. And that was, they call that the Navy's HMS Navy or something like that, where the soldiers had to go and learn about ships and different things. And so we walked around there, and the ship is so reasonable that it's so hard to tell what and how it got there. And I try to figure out how they got the ship in this concrete basin. So they had a ladder there where you can climb up on, and there was one man up there, and I asked him, I said, can I come up there? And he said, well, you can come up, but you better hurry because I'm not going to stay here very longer. So, well, I went up on the top, and I still try to figure out how the ship got there. And so I went to the ship's board line, or whatever you call it, and I looked over the area. There was quite a big area, and guess what I found? I found a river, which is the well-known British river. What the heck they call it? I forgot. This is too fast to think about it. But anyway, now I know how the ship got there. They went down the river, and then they floated it in there, and then they tied it up with steel ropes, or whatever they call it, chains, you might say. And now, since I was up there, I want to know what was inside. And the guy that was up there, he said, you better hurry up, you know. I said, well, I want to see what's inside the ship. And he said, well, you can climb down here and go in there and come right back up because I'm going to close up here. So I went down in there, and what I found was tea from China. That must have been in there, God knows, forever. Then I came back down, and the guys were standing there, my wife was there, and I said, I'm going to build this ship. And so everybody started to laugh, and you know, I said, I'm not going to build it that big, I want to build it as a model. Oh, you a lot of this and a lot of that, and so anyway, I took some pictures all the way around, so I had some idea of what it looks like. And then I went ahead, and when I came home, I went ahead and set something up to build that ship. That the setup, it takes more time than anything else, because now I needed the tools, I needed everything that I can think of. Now, I was familiar with tools because before I came to the United States and was in grade school, I went in with one of the teachers, and they taught me how to handle wood and how this and all these different things. And I built sailplanes then, and anyway, that's besides the point. But I came home and I got everything set up, and then I started building it. And it was not very easy because I made so many mistakes that I had to tear up and start over again. But anyway, finally I got everything to go, I would say this is going to turn out okay. Then, since I have the business, I have salespeople coming in, and they came in and they looked at the ship when I got it finished, and I had it in my store. And one of the salesmen said, "Well," he said, "I'm going to call on a television station." And the TV station, let me think who was there. Well, anyway, I can't think of it, but anyway, it was a crew from the TV station that came to the store. And well, once they got there, they got very interesting, and they started to line up something where we can take a movie from. And well, anyway, I was just thinking of the people that were very well known, but this is 30 or 40 years ago. So, well, anyway, they came out, and they had a director there, and they had a cameraman there, and they had a guy that tells you how to talk and what to do, and Harry Porterfield was there, and a few other people that are well known. And they had the ships set, I had two of them, they had the ships set up so that they could get right into the camera. And they had Harry Porterfield on one side, and they said, "Now you watch this guy, what he's doing, and you do the same." Well, so anyway, he came in walking, and he had to make 3 or 4 attempts to get it right. And then, of course, he said to me, "Well, can you copy it?" I said, "Well, I copy everything else. I might as well copy it." So I copied it and went okay. And once they got done with it, he said, "Now we want to see your workshop." Well, it was not quite set up, you know, to see the workshop, because I had stuff laying all over, and not only that, I have to go to work, you know. I can't just play games, you know. So anyway, I got ahead and called my wife and said, "Don't bring him here." She said, "I'm not ready for it," you know. Well, anyway, but she got herself ready, and then of course I had to go into the basement, because that was the only place I have to work. And well, it so happened so that what I didn't expect, the cameraman, he was on his knees, and I was about 2 or 3 feet away from her, and shot the pictures right up like this. And I really don't know what has happened. He did want to know what this tool was for, and what this was for, and why you do this and why you do that. And, well, anyway, and then one of the guys that was running this system, he said, "You know," he said, "we better get moving. You know, we got to get this on at 5 o'clock on the news." I said, "Oh, well." They went, and at 5 o'clock they had it on the news. And now, of course, a lot of people knew about it, and then I got calls from everywhere, and they want to buy a ship and but you know, I can't even tell you how many calls I got. But I figured they only cost $100 or whatever else.
Wow.
Nobody realizes that you work a whole year on one, you see. This one that we're talking about, that was the first one in the United States.
Okay.
And so I didn't expect to, you know, get a lot of them. Once we become friends, you know, that right behind you, that's one of the earlier ones. And anyway, we got to work on doing these things, and I don't know how many I made, but I made a lot of them. The thing is, you see, when I said I'm going to build that ship, that upsets the whole system, because that was my idea, and that's what I did. But the guys that went with me, they just made fun out of it. And our next meeting in Chicago, that was a year later, everybody was standing in line and clapping. The ship was built, and everybody wanted to see it, you know.
Yes.
So then once that was over, then I just had my own idea of what I would want to do. My wife tells me, well, that don't look right.
Okay, she'll assist you in that way.
Yeah,
okay. All right.
But in general, it's so difficult to just come up with telling you exactly what happens when you build. See, I'm building a ship for him now,
Yes.
and I get pretty close to a year in it, and I'm not done yet. I still figure I do maybe in an average of 2 hours a day. Sometimes on Sundays, on holidays, then I get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I go down there and I work till my wife says, it's time to go to church.
Well, those are very intricate details, even down to, I believe they call it a dinghy hanging on the side. Is that called a dinghy? What's the little boat hanging on the side? What do they call that?
Well, that's the ship that takes you from the water side to land.
To land,
Yeah,
I believe they call them dinghies. And the people, I mean, you actually have those people there. I guess they're sailors. Tell me a little bit about placing them in order.
Placing them is no problem. Finding them is the problem.
Okay.
You see, I go usually around Christmas time to different places where they explain or show these little figures, you know. And then I take them, buy them, and then I make sailors on them. You see, they don't come like a sailor, you know, they come like a Christmas toy. And then you clean it all up, and then sometimes, like when you have the steering, you see, you have to make somebody that grabs the steering and turns it, you see.
Okay.
But that is kind of interesting because you can't find a toy like that. So you cut an arm off and cut a leg off and give them a wooden leg and to the arms and so forth. You have to make them so that they fit the steering, you see. And sometimes it's kind of tough. And I cut them off and try to fit them. And once they fit, then I drill a hole through there so that they can move. Really, there's a lot to it. It's not easy, but you have to like it. You see, that's the whole thing.
Yes.
And,
Now, do you find it soothing, relaxing when you're building these ships, or when you're?
Yeah, it's very relaxing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, how would I say this? The problem comes in when you got something all done and it don't fit.
On her final voyage, Old Ironsides, trim and proud, moved majestically into New York Harbor on August 29, 1931. Launched in 1797, her faded log, yellowed with age, was a record of long and heroic service. Though her hull bore the scars of many battles, she had never known defeat. And in our history, no ship ever fired the imagination of Americans like the frigate Constitution, whose sturdy side shielded and protected a young and struggling nation in the dark, uncertain days following the Revolution. On her final voyage, Old Ironsides, trim and proud, moved majestically into New York Harbor on August 29, 1931. Launched in 1797, her faded log, yellowed with age, was a record of long and heroic service. Though her hull bore the scars of many battles, she had never known defeat.